Hi guys, welcome back to Casting Commons, the show where we talk and discuss all things Pauper. I am your host, Teasdale, and this is my co-host, the doomed traveller himself, Reese.
Hello.
Hello. I did have a translated version in the notes, but we ain't saying that. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna be able to say that. I can't say English names at the best of times, so we'll just brush on past that.
Uh,
So, Paul, what have you been up to this week? Because I know it definitely ain't magic.
no, I've played zero Magic, so I'm fully reliant on you this week. I haven't basically looked at the challenges either until like 10 minutes ago. So I'm leaning on you pretty hard here. I've been on holiday at the Nürburgring. So yeah, I've had no time for Magic.
What you doing? Get your priorities straight, clearly, because magic should be top priority. Casting Commons is here.
Well, I did see if they had an LGS nearby, but there isn't one,
No.
unfortunately. What have you been doing? Hopefully playing some Magic.
Yeah, I've played a bit. Just test. It's more brews and content, more side of things. Just trying out some casting commons, some Commander Masters downshifts.
Yeah.
And to be honest, not very successful in the roundabout way. Been The closest thing I got to was the Blue Black Terror list I put up on Friday. The Blue Black Terror, Blue Black Mystic list I put up on Friday. I try to go like lean into hard control and then use like Murmur Mystic as like a win con.
Yeah.
But it just seems like you might as well just put some terrors in there.
Yeah.
Is basically the top and bottom of it. So
Yeah. Even in control, when you end up casting that many spells anyway, it's sort of just free.
yeah. But yeah, that's kind of it. Been trying a bit of spy of it, trying to see if I can get that to work. I can't decide if it should be 1 land, 3 lands, 2 lands. I kind of think I'm settling on 2. 2 seems like the right number.
Is that with the Troll Exhume package as well? Or not?
No, probably not. Probably just hard
No.
spy. Like that.
Hard combo.
Yeah, the exhume was fine in principle. It brings too many dead cards in it. I think I got quite a lot of dead draws. Like the idea of maybe boarding into exhume sounds okay against like counter magic, so you can kind of get like a 2 mana balustrade spy if your balustrade spy gets countered. But generally,
Transitional sideboard.
yeah, we do love a good transitional sideboard. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll still keep on testing, but I'm finding it super hard. I really, really am. Leagues are in a dire state.
Yeah, well, as we'll see in these challenges, it sounds like the most powerful, easy to slot in cards have been slotted in right away and made the decks a lot more powerful, or the decks that they slotted into a lot more powerful, and everything else that basically didn't get a card is struggling.
Yeah, and that's exactly how it feels. Like, to be fair, as we said when we discussed like Pauper 2.0, as it were, you're either going to exacerbate the existing archetypes that have got new toys, or these new cards that enable new things like Spy and things like that are going to be secretly really good. And clearly, it's shown as we dive right in, it'll be most likely the former thing. And obviously, these already existing decks got incredibly strong. But hopefully, it might encourage some action. We can hope. We can hope. But anyways, before we dive right into the challenges, I guess we'll just move into some news. I guess we'll keep covering these just for a little bit. So just to let everyone know, in case you missed last week's episode, the tournament news is the Northern Pauper Open has been announced for Sunday the 8th of October at Geek Retreat Leeds. The event is capped at 64 players due to venue constraints and all that sort of stuff. So they're always have been around that mark anyways. So I would genuinely recommend, if you are going to look at it, you should get your tickets as soon as possible. The link will be in the description of this Spotify/YouTube link, and it'll lead you to a Facebook group, which will lead you to the tickets pre-sale and all the information you need. That's pretty simple. I guess the next one as well is Paupergeddon has gone international. They have opened up a Reddit page where basically, if you want to look at the comprehensive rules and have a LGS nearby that would be interested in doing it, you contact the LPI contact, which is email address is lpauperitalia@gmail.com. They will send over the comprehensive rules, and you can look at getting involved in the road to Paupergeddon to kind of look at trying to get some buys based on the average leagues and all that sort of stuff. So definitely something that I would recommend if you are looking into it. And yeah, we will again put the email address in the description below, and also the Reddit link as well for the post. So, formalities out the way. Let's dive right into the challenges and the events.
Yeah. A big shake-up from what we've seen like the past few weeks. Just obviously the new Commander Masters cards have basically exploded on the Pauper. Saturday the 12th of August. First place was Green Red Ponza with Relic of Progentus in the main. Second place was calling it Esper Glitters. It's basically a sort of blue-white affinity all the glitters deck. Third and fourth was Corgate and Blue Red Terror. And then fifth through eighth was Mono Blue Terror with Serpent and Murmur Mystic from Commander Masters. Bogle's playing all the glitters. And then two more Blue Red Terrors, also with Serpent and Murmur Mystics. And then the near misses was a ninth place Kuldotha, and then a Blue Black Terror in 10th, which also had Serpent in.
So, yeah, I guess this is more like it is basically, let's start at this point, is when we were talking, not last week, but the week before, how Commander Masters is going to explode into everything, and you will see a lot of new decks and a lot of existing decks get really powerful toys. This is kind of what I was imagining last week's results should be. And I don't know if you were because to us, these Serpents, the Murmur Mystics to an extent, and all that glitters self-build themselves. And obviously, I guess clearly maybe people didn't have enough testing. And
some more than others, I suppose. I think for me, the Bogles is by far the most obvious one. With just you trim on a few numbers and put 4 all the glitters in, and it just makes the deck better.
Yeah.
And then obviously Serpent is probably the next one. I would say that you basically just put your Serpents in your blue red Terror decks and your mono blue Terror decks because you don't have Angler.
Yeah. So this is kind of exactly so this is what I was we were talking about when we were saying that they kind of build themselves. As Serpent is obviously an obvious inclusion in the non-black Terror decks. They're kind of fairly easy to slot in. You don't have the relevant threat capacity, and this is kind of it. Like Blue Red Terror or Terror in general got a lot of toys recently. It's obviously in 2 months' time they have Lorien revealed, which is an all-star card in multiple formats, never mind just Pauper, and Serpent as well, which is a pretty strong, like it literally is basically another Terror without ward. To an extent.
And sort of for Pauper as well, those cards are so powerful. To get them in such short a time is sort of a bit unprecedented for the format. Like there was a month gap between getting Loriens and then getting Serpents.
Yeah.
And for obviously Lorien essentially changed the deck from sort of edging on like a higher tier deck, but was a bit high rolly to probably one of, if not the best deck in the format, tied with Affinity and Mono Red.
Yeah.
And then to go from like a solid deck to one of the best decks and then get another premium, or even with Murmur Mystic 2 premium cards a month later, it's just huge.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I imagine it'll just carry on going as well, to be honest. I can't see a way back from this currently, with obviously the lack of peer involvement or making assessments. Don't get me wrong, it's obviously been 2 challenges since Commander Masters come out, but it doesn't really seem to, like, it's a deck that I put, especially Blue Black Terror, I put thing on, you basically put 4 relics in, you put 4 chainers in, and your matchup's basically free. And I think pre-Lorien, that was to some extent fairly true, but Lorien being, I will fix your early game issues, colour-wise, all that sort of stuff. I will then also fix your late game with card advantage. It's just made that not the case, like, at all. And then you've obviously now got another threat, which fair enough goes in more non-black Terror, but it's just, I can't see a way back from it, and I kind of just see the meta being, which Terror deck are you going to play? Because they all play fairly differently. Like, the blue-red deck is more of a control deck with Terrors in. It doesn't. It's not as hard on Terror as, like, blue-black is.
And I think that's the sort of difference where you were saying with the sideboard, and it used to be free as well.
Yeah.
Now that you can play, like, the blue-red version, you can just play the long game.
Yeah.
Like, you just wait till they pop the relic and then fill your graveyard back up and deploy some terrors.
Yeah.
Same with the mono blue one. There's that much just inherent card advantage. It can just go forever. It can just grind forever. And it doesn't have to do these turn 2, turn 3 terrors.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And like I say, like the blue-red deck just having the Monarch side thing to do as well.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, cool, well done. You've got a relic in play. I guess I'll just play as Commodore. Crack on.
An out card advantage, yeah.
I ain't fussed.
Yeah.
And then you'll just gradually, as you say, naturally just bolt, scred, counterspell, brainstorm away, and then they're forced to pop this before you even got a terror out. Like they're already getting buried in card advantage. They might as well pop the relic to kind of, eat the graveyard so you can't play a cheap terror, and then I might as well just quickly rebuild. They're just axis that these decks, like these all 3 decks to be fair, can play on is pretty strong.
Yeah, it's sort of getting to the point where they're that diverse, like between the 3 decks, there isn't just a sideboard plan for terror anymore.
Yeah.
You need some sort of way to out control the blue-red deck, or you need the relics for the blue-black deck. And then the mono blue deck's a bit of both. Yeah.
And the blue deck being like a Delver deck too is also another thing. Yeah. So it's just, okay, you've got relic, well, I'll kill you with 2 Delvers. Like that, very real.
So this one, I don't think was, but then the next challenge we'll cover the one that had them in. But yeah, this basically got the 4 terrors, the 4 servants, and 2 archaeologists and 1 mystic.
Yeah.
But then he's obviously stacked on like deep analysis, Lorien revealed, brainstorm, tons and tons of card advantage.
The good old Miser Fox bike.
just so you respect it.
Yeah.
I think the last thing I guess I've got to say on this is really cool to see Ponza taking down such a metagame that's dominated with new cards. Basically just putting relics in the main and saying, well, I've got a solid terror matchup. I'm just going to see how far I can run with this.
Yeah.
Obviously, Las Vegas Chaos as well is the absolute Ponza master, so not surprising there.
Yeah, definitely. Nice to see.
And good to see Bogles coming back a bit. Obviously, we said just before that all the glitters is a pretty obvious include for Bogles. It basically slotted into the slots most people would have cut for it, but a nice upgrade either way.
Yeah, I think the thing about Bogles as well that I didn't really think about as well. Bogles with having all that glitters as well. I was thinking, obviously it's just another mask. It's you've now got that many like payoff effects, but the fact that you've now got 8 effective ethereal armors costing so little mana, Jesus, that deck is fast. Like the consistency of how fast they were able to kill so early was, not very high, but now it's like, Jesus, you can easily die out of nowhere.
Well, yeah, if you go into turn 3 with a guy in play and you just ethereal armor all the glitters onto the guy with already like an enchantment or 2 in play, it's very, very big, very quick clock.
Yeah.
It also, I think, makes the mana base a bit better as well. Because you can go a little bit lower to the ground. You don't have to try and run the filter lands as such. Because you've got these 2 mana, essentially 2 mana masks or 2 mana ethereal armors that you can rely on, rather than having to hit 3 to have the big payoff.
Yeah. Definitely nice to see Boggles making an appearance, and I think you'll probably see it moving forward as well, to be fair, because how quick it can actually play out. You can quite easily play around a lot of the hate.
Yeah.
I think. So, it's nice to see. I guess we'll kind of touch on, obviously, Esper All That Glitters is a deck that, obviously, it was on the verge. We've seen it, kind of petering on that kind of existence when it was legal in paper but not on Magic Online due to that pre-release WPN time. Like, we've seen it occasionally. And it's nice to see that it's finally found some success with also Reverse Engineer, which is quite nice to see. But we'll touch on more on that later, I guess.
Yeah.
And I guess the final thing to highlight is obviously the absence of what we would expect to be the normal meta. No affinity. There usually is at least one there doing well. You've obviously got All That Glitters, I guess. The Esper All That Glitters, but not a traditional affinity.
Yeah.
No red. Closest we got was obviously the 9th place Kuldotha.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much Culdorf was actually after that either. I think there was one in 11th, one in 14th, but then there was a bit of a gap. Like there wasn't a huge amount in the top 32. Definitely not compared to what we've seen as of late.
Yeah, I don't know about specifically Culdorf, but there looks like there was. Well, that's one Boros. I'm just Control F and Swift Spear here. So
I'll guess about 4 or 5 decks, roughly.
3, 4, 5. So yeah, six. It looks like
Yeah.
Six mono red. There was 11 Swift Spear decks, but some of them were Boros and the other amazing deck that we will touch on. But
Seems like a perfect segue to go into that.
Yeah, definitely. So our deep dive deck for Saturday, as much as we would love it to be the Esper All That Glitters deck, I decided to put it on the BYVCI's 32nd place Naya Zoo.
Yeah.
I love me some Zoo. Anything that wants to experiment on Wild Cattle Curd, I am here for. And it's not Domain, which is also the most interesting thing, because I would always think that if I was to see a Zoo deck now, it would be Domain Zoo with obviously Tribal Flames. But it is a creature-orientated deck. It's got Swift Spear, it's got Experiment 1, it's got Wild Cowl, it's got Curdape, and Burning Tree Emissary. All there's 4 ofs, and then a 3 Hooter Mandrills to kind of round it off. With the usual package of Burn, you've got 4 Lightning Bolts, 4 Chain Lightnings, and then, which is quite nice, I think, the 8 Rends Resolves or Reckless Impulses. And then 4 land grants to kind of give it a low land count while also being a spell. And it also fixes its kind of colour requirements for Wild Cattle as well, which is quite nice.
Yeah.
With the land grant for a Radiant Grove, is it? The green-white one?
Yeah, the green-white, yeah.
And then you've got a 1 of Rancor as well, just to round it off. So it's a pretty sweet deck. Like, this is wow is all I can say.
Yeah.
I'm happy.
Yeah, it's a proper blast from the past, to be fair. I know when the Dominaria lands first came out, like the type duels, we obviously looked at Zoo, like bringing it back. Obviously, like you mentioned, it was more the Domain Zoo with Tribal Flames and Mactoritas, the 3-mana 5/5 guy.
But you also got the Outriders as well, didn't you? From Dominaria, you got the 5-mana Tribal Flames guy.
But sort of nothing ever really came together. Even when we got Experiment 1 as a downshift in, I believe, Double Masters or one of the Masters, it just sort of nothing really came together. But this is sweet. It's sort of a nice. You're basically straight green red. You've just got the 1 Radiant Grove to activate the 4 Nicals.
Yeah.
And obviously, you've got the whole Burning Tree, Rends Resolve, Reckless Impulse combo as well. It's a sweet one.
Yeah, it's quite nice that basically the Wild Cattle is going to be a 2/2, is how I'm looking at this. It's going to be a 2/2 on average, which is still fine. Unless you get obviously that Radiant Grove later on. But then also, you've got the Curdape, which is actually a 2/3. So you can kind of trigger the Experiment one quite nicely. And then obviously the Hooter Mandrills triggers it that little bit more, being a 4/4. So it seems quite. It looks like it works quite well.
Yeah.
I
think as well the Swift Spear is probably going to be surprising because you've got quite a high spell count.
Yeah.
Being able to cut just to 14 lands to fit the land grants in means you've got what 23 spells, 23 non-creatures, alongside your 23 creatures. So it's a pretty even split.
Yeah, it's definitely a deck built as Garfield intends it, with like almost your split quite
50-50 split.
Yeah. And then obviously it's got the powerhouse, obviously, as you say, it's got the Swift Spear, which is a great card, obviously, in any aggro deck. And then you've got the 8 Rends Resolve, Reckless Impulse, whatever, the 4 of each, to kind of just draw your deck. Which, as has been proven in mono red, is still great, especially when you're low ground. It's got a very standard sideboard as well, I guess. We'll touch on it. Don't really need to say what the 4 because they're all self-explanatory. You've got 4 Pyroblast, 4 Deglammer, 3 Weather the Storm, and 4 Relic of Progenitus.
Pretty standard as we're coming to see with how the meta's shaping up. You've got your 3 main decks that you want to fight, or maybe 4 main decks now. But yeah, pretty stock.
And definitely sweet to see. I just think I want to highlight this because it's an old archetype that's got no real new card. No, there's no new cards in this bar. I think the closest one's Ren's Resolve. Is that the newest card in it? Roughly.
Yeah.
I guess, or Experiment 1 / Monastery Swiss Beer. I can't remember which was first.
Experiment 1, but yeah, Ren's Resolve's by far the newest card.
Yeah. So you've got those are the newest cards, like no Commander Masters, you've got no Lord of the Rings, and it's still doing quite well in the challenge. It came 30. Like, don't get me wrong, it came last place that we would see, but it's still top 32 is still quite a good record.
Yeah.
So it's nice and refreshing to see that these old archetypes can still do well. It gives me hope.
Yeah. And it's always good to see Cardiff in play.
Yes.
Cardiff is a fun Pauper card, and it doesn't see nearly enough play.
Yes. 100% agree with you. We want to make it so Cardiff is the best creature in Pauper. This is what we need.
The utopia of Pauper where Cardiff's the best creature.
Yes. Start a petition. You want Cardiff versus Muldrifter without Ephemerate in the format, and then that is the pinnacle of Pauper. That's what we need. But yeah, so as much as it is nice to highlight this deck, we will go back to obviously the good segue to Sunday top 8. And
so Sunday the 13th of August, it's going to look very similar to Saturday. First place was Mono Blue Terror with Serpent. Second place was Blue Black Terror. Third and fourth was another Mono Blue Terror, this time with Mystic as well as Serpent, and Esper Glitters. Again with the reverse engineer, and then 5th through 8th was Green Red Ponza, Corgate, Bogles with glitters in, and another Corgate, and then the near misses were a third Corgate and a Blue Red Terror with Murmur Mystic.
Yeah, so it's almost a mirror of Saturday, to be fair, apart from Mono Blue instead of Blue Red Terror, basically.
Yeah. And a couple more
Corgates. Obviously, without Ponza kind of winning it, but Ponza's still featured there, which is, again, still quite nice. We got Esper Glitters, again, top 8'd, and then a lot of Commander Masters cards, which is nice. Yeah. And Corgate, to me, it's kind of showing its power, which I honestly think Corgate is probably one of the strongest decks. I really do. I just think people get bored of playing it. That is all I can come to the conclusion, because every time people play it, it does really well. But
Yeah, I think it is one of those when you're in a meta game where you could be playing sort of Mono Red or Terra or Ponza or even Affinity. It's a lot slower than all of those.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more time consuming to play. Although it's still like super powerful and it can still win games and top 8 challenges, it's a lot slower and more time consuming and more punishing if you play wrong as well.
Yeah. Definitely, it definitely is. And I've seen a lot of people lose games, like even playing against like myself in leagues and things like that, losing games because they're just overcommitting threats or I'll play this, and it is very much like all Corgate Brainstorm decks. They are very difficult to play and are very.
Or you just try and go in that one turn too early and then it backfires. Yeah,
definitely. But I guess touching on obviously Terra, another strong showing of Terra.
Yeah. I think for me as well, Mono Blue Terror feels like a deck that sort of was very fringe, and it was sort of a lot of people were just messing about with it because it was something different. And it's just went from that to probably one of the best decks in the format overnight. Just by gaining Serpent and sort of sometimes Murmur Mystic. It's just the power that it's gained is insane.
Yeah.
These ones, as you touched on before, are also playing Delver as Secrets as like a 12th threat.
Yeah, some are obviously still running like a Spire Golem as well, which is surprising because that my first initial thought with this would be Spire Golem out, Serpent in.
Yeah,
would be my general consensus, but
I think for me the Discover End list seems the cleanest. It's basically 4 serpents, 4 terrors, 4 delvers,
Mm.
and then a bunch of instants and sorceries and 16 islands.
Yeah. Looking at that list, it basically looks like blue black terror, but then you've took out the Gurmag Anglers, put in the serpents, and you've took out the stuff outs and put in snap. That's kind of what it looks like.
And you don't need to play tapped lands anymore.
Yeah, and you don't play tap lands. So yeah, which is pretty cool. It definitely does look clean because it is just a bunch of 4-ofs, basically, right the way down. Low land count too. Yeah, it is clean. It is clean, and the deck in general obviously has a lot of space because it's not yet defined. It's very much similar to like the garden space was like a month back.
Yeah.
There's a lot of room for a lot of good, powerful blue cards which everyone's played over the years, and then a lot of new blue toys like Murmur Mystic, Cryptic Serpent. You've obviously got Terra and Delver. People still like that card, so.
Yeah, I think now you can just play 4 Terror, 4 Serpent. Delver gets a lot better because your threats are so condensed that you end up playing like huge amounts of instants or sorceries. Especially with Lorien also bringing the land count down. Like I think this Discover End ones, is it like 32 instants and sorceries? So your Delver's going to be flipping like 60-something% of the time in the blind. Obviously, on top of that, you've got Brainstorms to set it up, and you get the value off the Thought Scouts and Mental Notes. Like you can look to your Delver. If it's not something you want, you can just bin it with a Thought Scout or a Mental Note. So you get even more benefit there.
Yeah, and even the ninja list, the Ninja Gamer 76 list that runs a lot of creatures, is still running 30 spells as well. Because Lorien just basically replacing lands is just huge.
4 of your lands are now spells.
Yeah, so here you go. But yeah, also glad to see Boomerang. That is a card that I love to see. And it's nice to see Boomerang in one of the lists. It was not in the other list. It was just the snaps. But yeah, definitely nice to see. And I'm happy Murmur Mystic. Look, I don't even know if it's the right place for these lists. Like, I don't know if it's blue, red, or mono. I don't even know if it should be in these lists. But it is nice to see as an alternative way of winning the game than just.
It's an interesting card. It's one that, although we're seeing it here, it definitely hasn't found its optimal place yet. I would say it's not as easy as the All the Glitters or the Serpents. To slot in. But I do think it'll get there. It will find a space because it is a powerful card.
Yeah, powerful effect as well. Like, obviously, as we've seen throughout Magic's history with these sort of effects, Young Pyromancer. And then you've also got the Pauper bubble where this is a 1/5, so it can't die. It's a lot harder to die and all this sort of stuff. The birds have flying, which is a lot very relevant. So yeah, we'll hopefully find a proper home for this sometime soon.
Yeah, I think the only other thing I've got to say on this is obviously a good showing from Boggles again. I've got a soft spot for Boggles. And All the Glitters is obviously a great upgrade from basically being not really placing very well for like a good number of weeks now. Just to do back-to-back top 8s is pretty big.
Yeah, my only thing I can think of is because Boggles, as much as it is like this aggro deck that's hard to interact with, I think with the fact that people were still on the belief of 4 Relics, 4 Chainers kind of helped the Terra matchup. I feel like Boggles got hit quite hard by the Chainers and the sacrifice effects and all that sort of stuff. And then obviously, to me as well, you've got like Boros taking an uptick with Crackland Shaman as well, which doesn't help it. And I think he just had a lot of splash damage from Lord of the Rings coming in and all that sort of stuff. So, but to me, as I said before, like that speed that it's gained off all that glitters can sometimes just go under whatever hate that people are rocking, and that's why I think it might actually be an actual real meta deck now, as opposed to just occasionally appearing in challenges.
Yeah, definitely. And last thing again, no mono red as we mentioned before. Obviously there was a 9th place in Saturday. I think in Sunday the closest was 16th. So yeah, well down. Low numbers in the top 32 in general, but really, really low placement as well. Not really low placement, but lower than normal placement for mono red.
Yeah, you've got obviously. I'm just looking here. Just again, Control Left. There's Force with Spear decks. The close obviously Boros was in there as well, but there was only literally 3 mono red decks in the top 32.
Yeah.
So incredibly low showing. But yeah, I guess this kind of leads us into it. We've kind of avoided it, speaking about it sort of. So the deep dive deck for Sunday is the Esper All That Glitters deck. So I've kind of covered it as Baker's 3rd, 4th place deck on the Sunday, but obviously kind of include them mugged because I do believe they are pretty much identical.
Yeah, they're very similar, if not identical.
So this deck is where. Sorry, I'm at 30th place because I Control Left for Swift Spear. So we are. Here we are. So basically, the deck is as Reese's touched on. It's basically a blue-white deck that splashes black for Blood Fountain. Really, it literally runs. I think 4 Mist Vaults and then 4 Springleaf Drum and 3 Chromatic Star for the black.
And the Blood Fountain as well is basically for that like burst of artifacts.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've got the extra utility of it. It can get creatures back. But you basically want it because it's 1 mana for 2 artifacts.
Yeah. So the idea is obviously just put a lot of, I want to say, dead artifacts that kind of just sit there and don't really do much. Like, you got Chromatic Star, you got Springleaf Drum, which kind of do things in the early game, but after that they just sit there. Blood Fountain again. This one has 1 Wedding Invitation as well. And I'm just going to double check Mog's list, see if they're running so pretty soon. So there's no Wedding Invitation in Mog's list, but. And then the creatures is 4 Mirror Enforcer, 4 Frogmite, 4th Raven Inspector, 4 Ornithopter, 2 Kenku. Is basically what I have here, and that is.
Yeah, so the only actual difference between the list is Baker cut us 1 star for 1 Wedding Invitation.
Ah, okay.
That's the only difference.
Which is quite, I guess, which is fair. And then finally we have 4 All That Glitters, which obviously the namesake of it. We've got 2 Metallic Rebuke, obviously another great card for these kind of quick aggressive decks. You've got 17 lands, which there is 1 island, and then after that it's 4 Razortide Bridge, which is a blue-white bridge, 4 Mistfall Bridge, which is a blue-black bridge, 4 Seat of the Synod, which is the blue Mirrodin land, and 4 Ancient Den, which is the white one. And then there's 7 Sorceries, which is 4 Thoughtcast and 3 Reverse Engineer, which Reverse Engineer is, for those who don't know, is a new kind of Thoughtcast in air quotes that got downshifted, which is Improvise, 3 blue, which you can tap artifacts to reduce the cost by 1 and then draw 3 cards. So basically you can tap 3 artifacts and then this is blue, draw 3 cards. So it's similar to a Thoughtcast in a sense. And this, it's very strong how many dead artifacts kind of is what I'm kind of dubbing the names. They just sit there. You can hold up Rebuke, you can reverse engineer, and obviously makes All That Glitters huge. Like, you can tell that the type of deck with 4 Springleaf Drum, 4 Ornithopter from the get-go. Like, you know you are going to, whatever you are trying to do, you are trying to do it very, very quickly. And yeah, that's all I've got for strong.
The sort of the main difference between this sort of All That Glitters artifact-based deck and the Bogles list that we're seeing before, obviously All That Glitters is good in Bogles. It's essentially more ethereal armors. But in something like this, it's also getting buffed off the lands that you have in play, the creatures that you have in play, the random Springleaf Drum or the blood token off your Blood Fountain. It's ridiculous how high All That Glitters get, and if you draw 2, it's pretty game over as soon as you get them deployed. Gain and reverse engineer for a deck like this is really big. It basically, you lose the reliance on the black for the Deadly Dispute package. So you don't need to run any of the black cards, obviously, other than this Blood Fountain. And can basically just lean on your Thoughtcasts and your reverse engineers to go off. And just like old school Affinity, you can basically turn 1 Thoughtcast pretty easily. you can jam Frogmites and Mare Enforcers super fast and just start beating with them as early as turn 2.
Yeah.
And then you've just got this massive punch of all the glitters from out of nowhere, basically.
Yeah, it kind of looks like originally when I was thinking about like, Esper Affinity with all that glitters is, or what's like the backup plan, but realistically you've got the standard Affinity Mirror Enforcer Frogmite
Yeah.
kind of Kenku game plan. Like that is a fine plan A. Never mind plan B.
Yeah, the Affinity main plan is your backup plan.
Yeah, which is still fine.
Yeah.
And still strong, as we obviously see here. I do like the idea of the wedding invitation. My main takeaway from when I was building, like looking at building Jeskai, all that glitters kind of affinity, swapping that kind of Ica Wellspringy Lembas sort of thing for wedding invitation is so free and just allows you to win games out of nowhere that like you might as well run some. Like don't get me wrong, this deck is probably that slow to be running like 4 of, but 1 or 2 is easily fine, and it'll be interesting to see how this archetype changes moving forward.
Yeah, it looks a really strong deck. As you said, the Ornithopter Springleaf Drum sort of engine has been a hugely powerful engine for years and years. Obviously playable in Modern Affinity, was playable back in the day. And was a staple of Pauper until sort of the dual lands and stuff got printed. And Affinity went in a different direction. But it is nice to see it back.
Yeah. One thing I have noticed though, obviously as you touched on with Reverse Engineer kind of leaning out of the black as well. I also think Deadly Dispute kind of Reckoner's Bargain is generally, turns out is quite obviously a net negative for the kind of deck because you don't want to be sacrificing artifacts.
Yeah.
You want those for your Frogmites, for your Mirror Enforcer, and obviously your all that glitters count is just crucial. So like even sacrificing a blood token for a Deadly Dispute to receive a treasure to play something usually doesn't work out quite as well as you hope in a deck like this compared to normal Affinity. So Reverse Engineer seems like the perfect downshifted perfectly for this deck, which is pretty good to see. I guess touch on the sideboard. Because it's base blue white, there is a lot of access to. So there's 4 Dust to Dusts, which you can easily cast. You've got obviously Springleaf from Chromatic Star and your base blue white, so the mana base really does lean into that.
Yeah.
Standard 4 blue Mental Blast for the red decks, red matchups. 2 spell bombs, Nahal spell bombs that is, for graveyard based decks. I'm assuming doesn't want to run Relic because of their own graveyard interaction with Blood Fountain.
Yeah.
Got 2 turn-asides for like anti removal, anti-dust to dust tech to obviously counter anything that wants to get rid of all that glitters or multiple alpha glands or whatever, all that sort of stuff. 1 dispel for whatever you might need those sort of counter an instance, I guess, or whatever you could possibly want.
Yeah, it's sort of just a third turn aside, but
Yeah.
sort of with a different slant, like you can bring it in against counter magic and stuff like that as well.
And then 1 circle protection blue and 1 circle protection green to round things off. And green stands out to me for Bogle's matchup, which is quite interesting. They're obviously prepared for that. But quite nice to see that basically I don't think they have really any outs to it, to be fair. But pretty interesting.
Yeah, I guess a big thing to just go over there is circle of protections don't actually target.
Yeah.
They choose, so you can use it on a Bogle and take no damage.
Yeah.
And obviously without sideboard cards, Bogles is pretty dead in the water to a result circle protection.
Yeah. And then circle protection blue again is pretty similar in that sense, but it's basically just for terror because again it doesn't target, so it avoids the ward. It just gives you that much time.
I think especially with the metas that we are seeing with like mono blue terror and the blue red terror, the cop blue's huge.
Yeah, 100%. Never leave home without it. If you're playing white, that is, would be my advice. But yeah, it's pretty cool to see. Sweet deck. Definitely nice to see a different spin on Affinity.
Yeah, I will definitely be giving it a run out because it's right up my street.
Yeah. It's Affinity and Bogles smashed together. Sounds definitely right up your street.
Yeah.
And then I think that's kind of it really for the deep dive deck. Looks super fun. Definitely can't wait to lose to it in leagues. Better than losing to Terror, I guess. So moving to the hot takes from last week.
Yeah. So my first one from last week was a pretty easy one. That we'll see more Commander Masters cards in the top 8. And we're seeing absolutely loads of both challenges. There was just tons and tons of Commander Masters everywhere. That was a pretty free one.
Yeah.
Although we did expect it last week, and it just didn't materialize for whatever reason. I more expected the results from this week to be what last week was like. But it just seemed like people weren't on it as much as I expected.
I guess maybe they just didn't have enough time. I guess when the update was live and testing new decks and things maybe. But yeah, mine was Fams or Familiars will top 8 next week's challenge featuring either Wind Rider Wizard or Murmur Mystic. Obviously not the case. Terror was everywhere. And the closest was 18th place on Saturday, which had Murmur Mystic and went back to Meter Mines. So maybe next week. Fams is definitely a strong deck, and it always, whenever it gets any, I'm going to say when it gets anything blue that draws cards or does something to do with instant sorcerers, usually they'll, take about 10 weeks to figure out if it's good or not, and then go back to old familiars and absolute carry on tearing anyways. So, yeah.
I think Fams is one of those, it needs the pilots.
Yeah.
So if you just don't have the pilots that week, it just doesn't show up.
Yeah. Wait till everyone's got bored of Commander Masters cards and they're all back on Fams and winning again.
My second one was we'll see more top 8s like we did last Sunday, where a deck sort of outside of the de facto top 3, which at the time I said was Mono Red Affinity and Blue Black Terror, dominates the top 8 like Boros did. We haven't seen it to the same extent as Boros. But for example, the Saturday had triple Blue Red Terror in the top 8. Sort of similar to Blue Black Terror, but distinctly a different deck, I would say. And then again for the Sunday, still not to the same extent as the Boros did last week, but double Mono Blue Terror and double Corgate with another Corgate coming 9th. We are seeing something pretty similar to where basically one deck does really well.
Yeah. I guess before I move on to mine, just want to, take devil's advocate here and maybe start a point. Are we getting to a point where cards are obviously bannable? Like I know it is obviously week 2 and it is very early days, but if we carry on like this, where Terror dominated Lord of the Rings, Terror dominated here, is Terror or something out of Terror bannable?
Well, I'm just going to say Swiftspear still hasn't been banned, so I won't get your hopes up.
No, but I'm not don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about PFP banning it or it is getting banned. I'm more talking should it be banned? Because let's be honest, everybody knows, even though there's no mono red here, Swiftspear is a card that just should not be Pauper legal. I think Swiftspear being in the format here, now it's something absolutely dog. Say, for example, now for the next 3 weeks, we have Terror, 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 all 3 different colours, all 3 different variations. And then that gets banned, all it's going to happen is mono red Swiftspear is going to just dominate again, because Swiftspear still exists in the format. But because that's been overshadowed by Terror, are we getting to a point that there is a potential where Terror is too good for Pauper? Is a 1 mana 5/5 with hexproof too good for Pauper?
I guess it sort of depends on what you want the format to be and how manufactured you want the format to be. From sort of my understanding, the PFP has as minimal sort of manufacturing of a format as possible. So if they can not ban anything, they'll just let it play out and then hope that eventually that thing is now no longer ban worthy.
Like Swiftspear feels like now.
I'm sort of skirting around answering the question, I guess.
This is a very politician's answer here.
Yeah. I don't know. In my opinion, Terror has been probably the best deck since it got Lorien. And now there's just more variations of that best deck,
Mm.
which is not the worst thing. It's good that it's now not just blue-black.
Yeah,
Like you've essentially
definitely.
got 3 decks,
Yeah.
which was sort of the same thing that happened to Mono Red. Is Kuldoffer was the best deck for ages, and then it got more tools and split into 3 or 4 variants.
Yeah, definitely.
Which again, like you're playing against different decks, but it's all sort of the same issue: is Swift Spear is too good or Terra's too good.
But then again, is it also? I'm not necessarily saying Terra is too good because as we said, it's basically been the best deck since Lorien came out. So then, is Lorien the problem? Like, I'm not saying that these are the things. I'm just generally curious. Like, I know we're in week 2, but we're basically not really because we've had a month of Lord of the Rings, and it's basically been the best deck then. And this is kind of what I was implying when I was saying Pauper 2.0 is we have so many cards that are coming in a quick succession. You can't just wait till the next set. You kind of got to look at what's actually going to impact the format. And looking at Cryptic Serpent, obviously potentially Murmur Mystic to an extent, these cards might take Terra over the edge regardless of the colour variations.
Yeah.
And it might be, like, and I'm not saying it is, but you have there's a lot of Terra. Like I have played about 8 to 10 leagues since Commander Masters came out, and I have versed Ponza and Terra is pretty much it. Like with a spattering of like one different deck a league, roughly, it is basically Terra and Ponza. That is all I'm seeing in leagues. Like I rarely see Monetary Swiftspear now.
And it's like it's not even over an extended period of time either. That's like 10 leagues in 7 to 10 days, I guess. And it's already everywhere. Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one to answer. In my opinion, I would say the cards are probably those like Swiftspear and Terra are probably too good for Pauper, but I don't think anything will be done about that.
No, I can
think
definitely see that.
They're sort of cemented in a position where they don't want to ban anything, and if they can leave it so it plays out, they will leave it so it plays out.
Yeah, which is again also fair, and which is fine because I'm not saying oh my god we need these banned, but for viewers at home, definitely not saying that. I'm more just saying we have obviously not looking at this from it is week 2, let it play out. It's more it's week 7 or 8, 6 to 8, depending on when Lord of the Rings came out. Terra has been dominating, mainly in blue-black, recently over just before Commander Masters, blue-red as well, and now with the addition of Serpent, we now have blue. So we have 3 decks that are really strong, and all Terra. They also all have Lorien in, and they also all have Counterspell in, and Thought Scour, and Melanol. Like, I'm not saying it's specifically Terra, but obviously Terra is the main name of the deck and the powerhouse.
A lot of those cards have been around for a long time.
Yeah.
And have played fine in other decks, but now, they're all sort of jammed into this one creature deck.
Yeah. Like, I'm not saying, like, Brainstorm needs to be banned or anything, you know what I mean? Like, but it's just...
it's an odd one. But I think it's part of the symptom of letting it play out as well is that Swiftspear was clearly too good for Pauper. And that essentially dominates until a card like Lorien that is just even better than Swiftspear comes and displaces it. And then then Swiftspear won't get banned, so Lorien will be the top card. And then before anything's done about that, another card will come and displace Lorien because WotC basically keep amping up the power level. Like recent commons, they've all been pretty jacked in power level. And then something will come and displace Lorien, so then Lorien won't get banned, and you'll just end up with all these hugely powerful cards.
But the problem with that is when something, say like Chatterstorm level, which is the obscene level card that puts on top of obviously Lorien, for example, you're then going to get this big stack that as soon as you take that one, you're just going to revert back to the previous one.
Yeah.
And then
that is the issue.
So we get to the point that say does Lorien needs banned or Terra needs banned or whatever it turns out to be. Are you then going to get back and then okay, are you banning Swiftspear now, or are we just going to have 5 different mono red decks that everyone wants to cry in leagues or paper tournaments?
Yeah, I think I guess my final point on this probably because we have gone on it.
Yeah, we have gone on it.
Generally in Pauper, like past Pauper before we had a PFP, the answer has always been to remove the kill condition, because all the other pieces generally are fine and see play without that kill condition.
Yeah.
So my lean towards would be to ban Swiss Spear and to ban Terror and to leave the rest of the shells intact.
Yeah.
Because then you leave the space for like a Cryptic Serpent shell, which
Yeah.
is a good card, but just dies to removal. Like, it doesn't have X-Proof.
Yeah.
It costs more mana.
Yeah.
So it's more suited to the former.
Yeah. I can definitely
So
agree with that.
you sort of leave those decks intact. Like, you ban Swift Spear, Mono Red, and Cold Off will still be a deck.
Yeah.
You ban Terror, like the Mono Blue version will probably suffer the most, but the Blue Black and the Blue Red version will essentially continue to exist just with Cryptic Serpent instead of Terror.
Yeah.
But their overall power level will be dramatically reduced.
100%. And it's just like as I say, we're not here to sit and cry about banhammers by any stretch of the means. That's not. It's more just an interesting take because it has been quite a while in terms of sets now. It's been about 6 to 8 weeks, and it has been consistently winning. So that was kind of why I just thought I'd touch on that, even though we ended up spending about 15 minutes talking about it. But going back onto it, my hot take from last week was that a non-white reanimator will top 32, i.e. using Dread Return as a reanimate spell 5 to 8. That was a stretch. Didn't happen.
No.
We can hope. One day...
Was there any Dread Returns in the 2 challenges?
I don't think so.
I can't mind seeing anyone else scanning through, but I know obviously there's been a few sort of Exhume reanimator decks playing the Cascade cards to try and flip into Exhume.
Yeah.
Like, you only run the less than 3, the 3 mana Cascade cards, and all you run less than 3 is the Exhume. I've seen those, but not sort of taken off too much. People are still brewing with them.
Yeah. But no, we had nothing, which is unfortunate, but maybe sometime in the future, I guess. Guess can't compete with all the relics that are knocking around with Terror.
Well, yeah, that is a problem for Reanimator.
Hot
next
takes
week?
Yeah. Hot takes for next week.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first?
So, yeah, my first one, which sort of goes on back to our is Terror too good for Pauper? My first hot take is we will see a top 8 where every deck is playing some number of Tolarian Terror. Yeah, as we have just went on about, the card is insanely good at the moment. The deck in general is insanely good, and now there's 3 variants of that deck that all have their own strengths and weaknesses. So I can see, well, we're already seeing top 8s with 4, 5 Terror decks, and it's been what, 2 weeks?
Yeah, we will get there. We will have the top 8 that is full of Terror. I bet you want to get 7 actual dedicated Terror decks, and then one of them will either not be a Terror deck, or it'll be blue, red, Fable, and 2 Terrors.
I'm going to run Bogles in the next challenge. I'm just going to put 1 Terror in my sideboard.
So mine is Gardens will make a return in a top 8 next week. Is basically it. I can see Gardens generally does do quite well against, well, it did do well against blue-black Terror, because it could have the card advantage to keep with Lorien, and has the removal to kind of keep up with Terror. So, and can run Graveyard interaction like Nal Spellbomb and Duke of Bog and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So it might see it, but maybe Lorien Reveal, Cryptic Serpent has made it too much of a bad matchup.
Yeah, I guess the blue-red version having its own out to Monarch as well is probably makes it a bit tougher for Gardens.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially if it's playing Murmur and Mystic.
Yeah.
Like, if they can play Mystic and then get 2 spells off, you can remove the Mystic, but then you've got 2 birds beating you down.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. My last hot take for next week is, I guess, something we're starting to see already, is that Mono Red will die down a lot. And Swift Spear will be overtaken as the card to ban, is what we're here.
Yeah. So, which is happening. Obviously, we've seen, 9th place Cold Author, and Swift Spear will definitely not be on the radar for a card to ban. I don't think that.
Well, yeah, 9th into 16th.
Yeah.
On the Sunday. So we'll see next week how true that is, but it'll be interesting to see if we get another 2 challenges with 0 mono red in the top 8.
My last one is basically Terror and Colgate will be the top decks next week. Any variation of Terror, blue black, mono blue, blue red, and I do think Colgate obviously must have a strong Terror matchup. Prismatic Strands has access to relics. It could even play Cop Blue if it needs to, and I just think it's a strong deck overall. It's just if people want to pilot it.
Yeah, definitely.
So those are the hot takes for next week. Pretty cool. Hopefully we get them all. I never seem to get any, but I maybe need to stop going all off the wall. Maybe that is my problem. It's the hot takes.
Take the free ones. Take the free one.
So guys, this has been it for Casting Commons. And if you have enjoyed the podcast, please share it with your friends, local Pauper community. Word of mouth has given us a big influx of viewers, and it'll be fantastic if we can continue growing. We really appreciate all the support that we've been getting. So, yeah, send it out. Send it to everyone, because we are amazing. We are doing amazing work. But yeah, that is all from us at Casting Comments. Until next time, and don't forget to stay hydrated.
See you later.